Hello, everybody, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm T.
And I'm Blondie. Well, how are you, T?
Obviously, my brain is not here. My mouth started to go and didn't know what to say. Okay.
Behind your head, there's this little switch. Can you just turn it on?
I think it needs to be recharged.
Do you need to be reset?
I definitely do. How are you, Miss Blondie?
Well, I was fine till up about a minute ago.
You're like, this is hopeless. Let's not even do it right now. Why am I bothering? She's an idiot.
I didn't say those things.
I know you, though. I've known you a long time. So, yeah, you did. I heard it. I think I've done that a couple of times where I just totally space for a moment. All right. Sorry about that, everybody. Have you heard? This is a brand new thing, because we're native Southern Californians, that there's a beach in California that's now going to require reservations.
No.
Isn't that wild? Lake Tahoe Beach is going to be requiring reservations. I guess they're going to do it like on a trial basis. And they're going to have their people on weekends and holidays at Sand Harbor State Park have to make reservations and pay to go to the beach.
Wow. So this is Lake Tahoe. And in my brain, I guess because I'm Blondie, I'm thinking beach only applies to the ocean. I never picture a beach at a lake.
I'm with you too. To me, that's not a beach, but
Yeah.
I guess they're calling it a beach, and you're right. It's a beach off of a lake.
Do they have everything slotted out, like your section number 1, 2, and 3?
That's what I was wondering. Like, is someone walking through and making lines in the sand for, this is spot 1, here's spot 2. And then, someone just goes around and races it and makes it bigger.
Do they have to walk around with some kind of tag on their bikini? To know they've had the reservation?
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of goofy. It's such a weird concept. We both grew up with the beach very close by. You live by the beach right now. And I grew up with, all my family by the beach, and we spent every holiday at the beach. And I have so many great memories. It was bad enough when they started charging so much to park there.
Oh my gosh.
Right? It's insane. And now they want to start charging to be on the beach. It's like, this is part of our right as Californians. The beach should be free. It should not be being charged for.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
I fully agree.
I saw this and I was like, this is dumb.
Tell me how you really feel.
It's dumb.
Oh my gosh. So hanging out at the holidays at the beach with your family is one of your fond memories?
Oh, very, very fond memories. Of course, sand in places it definitely shouldn't be. Mm-hmm. But that was part of the fun, You get a little sunburnt and you eat bad food, and they had the fire pits there always, and barbecue and do s'mores and, s'mores. And you can pretty much run wild. It was a good time.
And speaking of fire pits and sand in places sand should not venture, one of my favorite memories, or most bizarre memories, put it that way, most traumatizing memories. I was 17 and I was with my boyfriend at the time, who is actually my husband now. And we used to get together, us and our group of friends. There's always couples. And we'd go get some food. We go down to the fire pit at night and start a fire, bring our blankies and eat. And then, how do I say this tactfully? Pair off under the blankets.
Pair off for a little privacy.
Pretty much, yes. And one time we had come out underneath our blankets, and it'd been just a couple minutes, look up and see his parents and his little sister walking up. One of the other couples refused to come out underneath the blanket. Another one that had been down by the water, they come walking up arm in arm with their blanket. What I wouldn't give for reservations at that point. You need a reservation to come in here. You can't come in here now.
You needed a sign. It said, if this blanket's rocking, don't come a knock.
Walk away. Just walk away.
Walk away, people.
Yeah, it was a little traumatizing. And I was just an angel at the time. At least that was my impression of their impression of me.
Until that moment.
Right.
Until that moment. Because I'm sure the looks on your faces gave everything away.
Oh my gosh. Clothes askew, hair askew. You think?
You think. Wow. Some of my favorite memories at the beach, the only thing I caught was sand crabs, not like you, no STDs or anything.
You and your sand crabs under your blanket?
I loved sand crabs. Do you remember them?
No.
Oh, they were like gray. Some of them would get kind of big and like gray cockroaches. And I don't know. I can't stand cockroaches. It's like the worst
You
thing in the
hate
world.
cockroaches.
Oh my God. Yeah. Disgusting. But for whatever reason, I could dig deep and pull these babies out of the sand. They'd be wiggling their little legs on. I'd be like, yay, I love this.
Oh my God.
Put them in a bucket and just play with them and stuff. And then, you let them go before you leave. But I loved sand crabs. That was
cockroaches of the sea.
But fun times.
We had very different memories of the beach.
I had cockroaches and you had, we're just going to leave that alone. That went really to the left there.
Definitely going to have to mark this explicit.
I didn't finish it.
It's the implications.
Unlike you.
Ouch.
Just saying.
At least coming out underneath the blankets, we were smiling.
I would have paid to see your husband's parents. I know them. It would have been like, oh man.
And his little sister.
Little and curious.
Yes. Anyway.
Anywho, what's your story about today, beach blanket baby?
So this story is about Colby and Kristen Trickle. So let's get our grim on.
Let's do this.
It's midday on July 14th, 2021. Colby Trickle is driving down the street in Hays, Kansas, when he sees flashing lights in his rearview mirror. He pulled over, and 2 Hays police officers went to his car. They asked Colby to get out and walk towards the rear of his car. He complies. He is placed in handcuffs, and he is arrested for the murder of his wife, Kristen Guy Trickle, who died 2 years earlier.
Wow, I was sitting there thinking that's a lot for a ticket or something. This is very different.
Yeah, a lot different than just a little ticket. Kristen Guy was born August 20th, 1993, and had a tough go as a young child. Her mother left both her and her father when she was just 2 years old. When she turned 17, she moved in with her aunt and uncle, Dylan and Brant Rice, along with their 3 children. Even though her life started off rough, she loved living with her aunt and uncle, and was described as always having a smile, wouldn't say a bad word about anyone, and thrived.
Well, it's nice to hear she found some happiness.
She loved her aunt and uncle. So yeah, she really did. Colby and Kristen met when they were 18 years old. They both went to the same church that Kristen's family attended. Colby was part of the worship team, and his band played the worship music during the services. He had written songs and played the guitar. Kristen was impressed by Colby. 3 years later, the two got married on April 25th, 2014, and moved to Kansas City. Colby enlisted in the Army Reserve and also did a variety of jobs, while Kristen worked at a veterinary clinic. Kristen loved animals and had goals, but this was in the future since they didn't have a lot of money.
They sound like a very typical married, young, and are having to work really hard kind of couple. I mean, pretty normal.
Right. Sounds like they were doing it.
Right.
The two moved back to Hays in early 2019. Her family was so excited. It was good to have Kristen around again. She worked at the local Walmart and began making plans to open a pet grooming and boarding business. She even picked out a little house with a small barn behind it at the south end of town. This business sounded so cool, and she wanted to use the barn in the back as the boarding portion.
It does sound pretty cool. I love animals. I'd love to be around animals all day, but, that's quite a job.
However, things between Colby and Kristen weren't what they seemed. According to Kristen's aunt and uncle, Colby exhibited controlling behavior, which was a source of concern for them. If Kristen was out and Colby texted or tried to get a hold of her, but she didn't respond immediately, he would get angry with her. Her aunt and uncle said he wanted her to be at his beck and call.
Oh, hell to the no.
It's fall 2019, the night before Halloween. Kristen set up bowls of candy to get ready for trick-or-treaters to come the next night. Colby and Kristen played video games, then Colby goes to bed. The next thing you know, he is woken up by a ringing in his ears. He looks at Kristen, lying next to him with a gunshot wound to her head. He gets up and runs to her. She's looking at him. He grabs his phone and calls 911. It's October 31st at 5:37 a.m., and while on the phone with the dispatcher, he checks her pulse and doesn't feel one. He picked up the gun that was lying by her neck. During his interview at the police station, Colby told officers that he picked up the gun and he considered killing himself at that moment. He said, quote, "I put the gun to my head, but I was on the phone. They said they were sending people," end quote. Now, that statement just sounded really strange to me.
Very strange. So he wanted to kill himself, but, he had to wait because they were sending people. I mean, so he's being courteous? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense.
And then she was shot and he wasn't, but yet he wanted to kill himself. For what?
The only thing I could think is maybe, they were young in love at that moment. He didn't want to live without her.
But he didn't say that, did he?
No. I mean, if you found your loved one shot in the head, your brain isn't going to function properly, I think.
Yeah, but I'm not immediately going to go to, well, here I go too. That's not going to happen. If my husband jumped off a cliff, I'm not jumping after him. Let's put it that way.
You're going to ask him where the life insurance was.
On his way down before he hits something, like, where's the paperwork?
In the cabinet.
In the splat.
Okay, that's just terrible. You are so bad.
I'm going to be like, dang it. So close. Now I got to look through stuff. Oh,
I know how much you love looking for stuff.
Yeah.
So responding to the call was Sergeant Hopman from the Hayes Police Department. When he arrived, Colby was outside on the porch waiting for him. Sergeant Hopman went into the house and into the bedroom. He saw Kristen in bed, in her underwear, with a bullet wound to her head. When he looked closer at Kristen, he saw her jaw move. She was alive, and that glimmer of hope struck him.
Okay, geez, I did not see that coming.
That she was moving?
Yeah, still alive.
Paramedics came in, performed CPR on Kristen, trying to save her life, but she didn't make it. Sergeant Hopman went out on the porch to let Colby know. Colby had been outside chatting with officers according to their body cams. They were talking about video games. The officers asked Colby what kind of games he played, like Counter-Strike. He replied everything from Call of Duty to Minecraft.
What? I mean, his wife is dying or dead, as he thinks, and he's talking about his favorite video games?
I was thinking that maybe he may have been in shock or denial, that they were going to save her.
I like how you keep defending him.
I'm just trying to look at it from different angles.
Okay. Not me. I'm going straight for the jugular.
You are. You're vicious.
When things don't add up, they just don't add up.
Colby was taken to the Hayes Police Department for questioning while officers investigated the scene. Colby's interrogation lasted more than 11 hours. Detective J.B. Burkholder questioned him about Kristen and his relationship, if they had had arguments or fights the night before. He said no. Then they asked him about their life, and Colby goes on to tell officers that he is with the U.S. military as part of human intelligence and is sent to some pretty interesting places. He was sent to the Middle East and Central America with his intel job and had a decorated past from his overseas tours.
No disrespect intended here to our reserve military, but do people in the reserves do all that? I thought they were just kind of like on standby.
Well, reservists work at a duty station near their home, and they are deployed to international stations only if they receive a call for active duty. This allows them to continue to have their career education while training close to home.
So they're not in the regular rotation of our people that are fully enlisted?
No, they are only called in when needed. They are backup. Yes.
Exactly. That's
Yes.
what I thought. Okay.
The detective asked about life insurance and if Kristen had any. His reply was that there was life insurance on himself through the military, but there was none on Kristen. Then he was asked the question, "Did you kill Kristen?" He replied no. Detective Burkholder felt that some of his answers were troublesome, but he did believe that Colby loved Kristen.
So even though it is difficult for me to understand, people still kill those they love.
I don't understand how killing them is even a choice. If you aren't happy and things are bad, just leave.
Yeah. And it's weird that the detective would surmise that he loved his wife. He didn't even know this guy.
After 11 hours, I'm sure at some point he got that feeling.
Meh.
Pessimist.
I'm just saying. You know someone 11 hours, you still don't know them.
I've known you for how many years? I still don't know you.
It's because you don't want to.
I'm in denial. I'm traumatized.
Yes, you are. Keeping your distance, staying safe.
That's right. Some things that transpired that morning also bothered Sergeant Hopman, who was at the scene. He wondered why Colby didn't insist on being by Kristen's side while paramedics were trying to save her, and why he was on the porch. I kind of thought the same thing, but like I said earlier, people deal with trauma differently. So that day, a search warrant was obtained for Colby's cell phone. The coroner performed an autopsy on Kristen to see if possibly someone or something else was involved. He looked for any signs of abuse, past or current, but found none. 3 days after her death, between Colby's statements and how the gun was found, the coroner ruled Kristen's death as a suicide.
Very sad. Did they have children?
No, they didn't have any kids.
Well, thank goodness for that.
After the report came out, Kristen's family struggled to believe that it was true, and the more they found out about what happened, they became convinced that she would not commit suicide. They said she was afraid of guns, and in no way would she use one to kill herself. Also, the fact that Kristen was found in her underwear puzzled them. She was a very private and modest person and would never want to be found in just her underwear. Plus, Kristen was happy about her boarding and grooming business and her plans to open it in that little house that she found.
I completely agree. She had an awful lot of plans for someone who would just commit suicide. And it sounds like her family knew her very well. And, just the whole thought of suicide and the way it went down just didn't make any sense for her, especially not at that time.
And because she was raised with them and they moved back, I got the impression they were a very, very close family.
It sounds like it.
During Burkholder's investigation, there were things that seemed odd. First, the alarm on Kristen's phone kept going off. As a matter of fact, he had to turn it off. He said she had set an alarm to get up, to get ready for work, and had plans for the day. A lot of times, individuals who are thinking of suicide are not setting alarms. Doesn't matter when they get up.
Ooh, good catch. That's some really good detective work.
I like this guy.
Yeah, me too.
Burkholder started to think of the manner in which she died. The gun was a full-size .357 caliber revolver that was held below her chin and fired. Besides being a very heavy gun, in his experience, most women that commit suicide don't shoot themselves in the head. It was unusual for women. Now, I asked a source in law enforcement that I know about women killing themselves, and he said the same thing. The reason is vanity, basically. They don't want to mess up their faces, so if they shoot themselves in the head, you can't have an open casket. Personally, my thought on that was, and this is coming from being a mother, who's going to clean up the mess after I'm gone?
Because he's not going to do a good enough job.
Right. Detective Burkholder said that women are a little bit more concerned about their looks even after death, that they really think about it.
I never really thought about that, but yeah, I think if I wanted to commit suicide, I would want to look halfway decent, especially if that was my last moment on earth. And I definitely would not want to make my family clean up. So this doesn't make sense.
And they're not going to get in what's in the corner and everything.
Yeah, there'll be like little brain matter stuck to things and, they'll be finding it for years. So, if I was going to do it, I'd be like, I don't even want to do it this way, but I have to do it this way for them because they're just not capable.
Right. This is bad. We should be laughing at suicide.
I'm not laughing at suicide. I'm laughing at the fact that, yes, they're right. As women, we think differently about like the aftermath of things.
Exactly. And whether or not because of vanity, what will they look like after, or like I was saying, or we were saying about, cleaning it up. I mean, you think about these. You definitely do think about these things. As a woman, you think about these things.
And we can laugh about how ridiculous that is because you're, thinking about taking yourself out. Who cares? That should be the very last thing on your brain. But it's so ingrained in us, as moms, as wives, it's just how we think.
No, I fully agree. But again, suicide is not a laughing matter.
No, it's not a laughing matter. It's just the ridiculousness of the things that women think about and why they do what they do.
Sergeant Burkholder also remembered Colby's statement that he picked up the gun thinking about killing himself, but placed the gun back down on Kristen's stomach. Why wouldn't he set it on the nightstand or anywhere else but on her body? Then he thought about the Halloween candy that was set out for the next day. All of these things made Burkholder think it definitely wasn't suicide.
I agree completely.
Investigators kept looking into the apparent suicide and went through Colby's cell phone that they had a search warrant for. They discovered two very interesting things. First, Colby had been having a Snapchat conversation, a sexual conversation, with another woman. Second was about life insurance that Colby said he didn't have on Kristen, and a Google search that was made. 4 days later, on November 4th, 2019, Colby was requested to come into the police station for more questioning. He was confronted about the life insurance Google search and why he was looking into that. He said he didn't. It must have been a search for information in case he died. They corrected him, telling him no, the search was if a spouse dies. He replied to that saying, Kristen must have done it, that they use each other's phones all the time. I literally would have just rolled my eyes at that.
This guy really isn't even smart enough to try to get away with this.
If he even did it, or he's just not real bright.
Yeah.
Pessimist. They also asked Colby about his online relationship. He told detectives that a few months before Kristen died, he had been talking to a woman that he met on a video game group chat, that it was just online, that they never actually met. Their relationship was strictly virtual, but because they had searched his phone, they found text messages between Colby and this woman. Some were even the morning of Kristen's death while he was at the police station. They asked Colby if Kristen knew about it. He said not that he knew of. Okay, so this is where my mind, I guess my sleuth mind, comes into play. You said that the relationship was just virtual. However, there were text messages between the two of them. Now, 10 days before she died, there was a Google search that Colby said Kristen must have done because they used each other's phones. Would you let your spouse use your phone if you were texting someone you shouldn't be? He didn't really think that one through.
You're so right. He'd have that phone locked up tight.
You would hope so. After Colby's second interview, Detective Burkholder went to the Walmart where Kristen worked to see if he could find out anything about Kristen and the time frame that she supposedly used Colby's phone for the insurance search. But Walmart video footage showed Kristen at work at the time the search on Colby's phone was made.
Wow, I really like this detective's thoroughness. I mean, he went and he did his real investigation stuff.
Exactly.
Very impressed.
He's doing his job. Colby also said that the gun was kept on Kristen's side of the bed, but cell phone photos showed multiple guns and they were on Colby's side of the bed. In one of the photos, there was a large revolver on the nightstand, and after searching the house, they found that the large .357 was the only .357 in the house, and it was Colby's gun. Inconsistencies from Colby were piling up. But even after all this evidence, the investigation stalled. Part of the problem was that the coroner had ruled Kristen's cause of death as suicide, which limited investigators' ability to get search warrants. This didn't stop the investigation, though. Investigators continued to follow up and also kept an eye on Colby. About a year later, Colby started collecting life insurance policies, one from the military for $100,000 and one from Walmart for $23,000.
I'm surprised that he could collect at all, considering it was a claim of suicide. I thought insurance companies didn't pay out for suicide.
Good point. However, the military life insurance was SGLI, which is Servicemen's Group Life Insurance, and they generally pay out no matter what the cause of death was. I would imagine that's why it took so long. I'm unsure about the Walmart one other than it was listed as paid out.
Very interesting.
They started looking into Colby's time in the military. Remember, he said he was in human intelligence and had been deployed and decorated for his overseas tours? Well, guess what they found out? He was reserve, never deployed, or sent overseas to talk to informants. Dude, seriously, were you that cocky to think they wouldn't check? Your wife killed herself. Why not just tell the truth about your military service?
I know. Why did he have to embellish so much? It's dumb. This guy's really dumb.
Maybe he thinks he's in Call of Duty.
Right. He's living the dream, but only in his head.
Even with his lies, it wasn't enough to prove that Colby had killed his wife. Just proof that he wasn't too bright. The investigation just stalled, but they still watched Colby. He went on with his life, playing his music in town and posting Facebook self-help videos, living his best life. It's been almost 2 years after Kristen's death. A new county attorney was elected. Detective Burkholder and the assistant county attorney approached the new county attorney with Kristen's file and told him that it was not a suicide. It was clearly a homicide. After looking over the file, the county attorney agreed that it was a homicide, and the coroner got it wrong. On July 14, 2021, Colby was pulled over while driving down the street and arrested for the murder of his wife, Kristen Trickle. Colby denied killing Kristen and said, quote, "I didn't do it. I know many people don't believe that, and I respect that," end quote. He honestly says the weirdest things.
He really does. And, if he really respects it, then respect the process of why you're being arrested.
I don't think he fought too much. I think he kind of just went with the flow. Colby retained defense attorney Cassie Ziegler, who didn't believe that he killed Kristen. Ziegler says, quote, "He cares about his spiritual life. He's a devoted Christian. I don't see that in him, this ability to connive and plan all this," end quote. Her alternative theory is more about Kristen and her childhood. She said that Kristen suffered from depression since she was young, that she had a lot of pain in her life stemming from when her mother rejected her when she was little. This kind of sounds a little bit like victim shaming to me.
Oh, it totally is. And what a joke that these attorneys who barely even know their clients and definitely don't know their victims try to explain anything about them and their character or their lack of it. They're not psychologists. Stay in your lane.
Ziegler also brought up the fact that the coroner determined the cause of death to be suicide and to date hadn't changed it. The coroner said he wasn't going to change his determination based on accusations. The county attorney and prosecutor had their jobs cut out for them, convincing the jury that it was a homicide. A new tact was taken to help show the jury exactly what Kristen's state of mind was before her death. Dr. Ashley Christensen, a forensic psychologist who was brought in to do just that, performed an autopsy of the mind. Dr. Christensen talked to Kristen's family, friends, and co-workers. She reviewed everything she could, diaries, journals, social media, anything that would give her an insight into Kristen's mind.
At least this lady was a psychologist, and she's definitely doing her homework. Good for her.
In September 2023, almost 4 years since Kristen's death, the trial began. The prosecutor started off by telling the jury, okay, now I really love this, that Kristen was murdered for A, B, and C, the oldest reasons in the world. A, an affair, B, breakdown in control, and C, cold hard cash.
Yikes. That wraps it up?
Done. We can all go home. Defense attorney Ziegler disputes all of these by saying the alleged affair, it was just an online flirtation, that it wasn't a plan to have a long-term intimate thing. But they've been talking for months. Isn't that long-term already?
Sounds like it to me.
Regarding the life insurance and Google search, Ziegler said that Colby didn't remember doing those searches, but he was filling out insurance paperwork for himself online. So maybe that's what happened. Isn't that a funny little coinky-dink? And didn't they already prove that Kristen didn't do them?
Yep, she was at work.
The trial continued with evidence showing that Colby received over $120,000 in life insurance payouts, that he had blown through the money in 8 months. He apparently paid some things off and made some purchases. The prosecution called Detective Burkholder to the stand to clarify exactly what Colby spent money on in one specific purchase for $1,942 to True Touch Dolls. Detective Burkholder testified, quote, "This is a company that made and manufactures and distributes life-size sex dolls," end quote. I looked at a website for these dolls, and they do range from $1,100 to $2,000 and have every style, shape, size, nationality that you could imagine. They even have a MILF and an ELF doll.
That's wild. And I think I told you not too long ago, I saw that show. They're taking these dolls like you're describing and they're making them interactive. So they can actually have a conversation with people. And the dolls, they look very lifelike, but they're making sure that they can like blink their eyes and their mouth moves, with the word somewhat. They're still trying to figure that part out. But the guy, and there's even male ones, so the person can sit with their doll and have like this so-called conversation because it's like Alexa. They know what to say. It's already in there. But all she ends up saying is, "Oh, I really want to go to bed with you. Oh, you're so sexy." It's just like all these crazy things.
Limited vocabulary.
Yeah. And it's some old pervy guy. And she's like, "Oh, you're so sexy. You're the best kisser." What?
Gross.
So gross.
But I will tell you, these dolls were scary lifelike.
Oh, yeah. These new ones are going to be around the $8,000 mark starting there. And they are legit, like their body parts move different. Their mouth and eyes move. They're just making it so that people can have like a more intimate, real life relationship. And the guys are already doing that with these dolls that don't even do anything. They're just dolls. They can just like bend their legs in weird ways for obvious reasons. But they don't do anything else. And they already have like these attachments to those dolls. So they're thinking these new dolls are really going to take off.
So these dolls are literally half the cost of a new small car.
Yeah, but they're going to get a lot more miles out of them. Vroom, vroom, baby.
Do they have to take them in every year for maintenance? You need their oil changed?
I'm sure they're going to have some clogged parts. So yeah, take that baby in.
Gross.
Gross. We went way too far with that.
Okay, reel it back. Reel
it back in. Okay, keep going. Sorry, I just got excited. I was like, oh my God, I just saw a whole thing about this.
Okay. So Colby's attorney, Ziegler, said, and you're going to love this, that Colby was very open about the purchase. He even talked to his mother about it, that he was having trouble sleeping alone. So I guess if you're traumatized and need companionship, you get a doll?
I'm sorry. If you're so desperate that you need a sex doll and not a person, try working on yourself rather than purchasing a fake woman to abuse. There's probably a very good reason you're alone. Like, I don't know, you killed your wife. So let's start there.
Ouch.
I'm just saying.
Judge and jury over here.
Hey, I already told you, jugular, okay? I don't like this guy.
Well, Kristen's uncle had the best response to hearing about the sex doll. First of all, he was disgusted. And to hear that it was comforting since Colby was having trouble sleeping, he said, quote, "For comfort and warmth, we have electric blankets that we use for that," end quote. When he said that, I literally laughed out loud. And did I mention that her uncle is a pastor, which made it even funnier?
Yep. And he's so right. All you need is a blanket.
Remember those ones that used to they glitch and they give you that little electric spark?
Or just take them to the beach.
I do not know what you were talking about.
Sorry. People seem to get lucky there with their blankets too.
Oh, shush. Little sand crab lady. So speaking of her uncle, he took the stand and told the jury that Kristen had been standing up for herself and had been more assertive towards Colby. So proving his testimony, prosecution produced some text messages between Colby and Kristen, specifically on April 8th, 2019, 6 months before her death. Colby told Kristen that she was different and pushy with things. Her response was, quote, "I'm just deciding to stick up for myself. Just like you, I'm taking control of the situation," end quote. And there's where your ABC, this is where your B comes in. Colby is losing control and he's not happy about it.
Yeah, obviously. I seriously do not like this man.
Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, I don't like people that are controlling, men or women.
So next on the witness list is Dr. Christensen, the forensic psychologist, and her assessment of Kristen. She said her life was that of hope. She was optimistic of her future with plans, with her business, and discussed them with her family. But here is where the interesting part comes in. She asked Colby if Kristen knew about the online affair. He said that she didn't know, the same thing that he told investigators. But he later said that he and Kristen had a conversation about the affair the week she died. And then there was that whole question, did you know, didn't you know? That was all thrown out there.
I'm just trying to put it together, like, would he have killed her for that? Maybe she said she was going to leave him.
I don't know. He was losing control and he was afraid of all of that.
Yeah, but he's already got a backup, so, move on with your bad self.
This was before the backup. Dr. Christensen's overall belief was that Kristen was not suicidal. Her exact words were, quote, relatively less likely that her death was the result of suicide, end quote. Defense attorney Ziegler was all over that, saying, relatively less likely? What does that mean? Then jumped on the fact how you can know someone's state of mind if you've never met them. You have no idea what they are going through or thinking. Plus, the interviews of friends, family, and coworkers were done 2 years after Kristen died. So do these witnesses have the same recollection of events and Kristen 2 years later? I kind of think she had a point with that one.
I don't think she has a point with that one because she was doing the exact same thing she's talking about. She acted like she knew Kristen. She acts like she knows Colby. She don't know them.
Well, I think the things about Kristen's past, she heard from her family, and that was her upbringing. It wasn't like a speculation of her state of mind.
Well, no, it was because she's saying that because she was traumatized from her past, that's why she committed suicide, that contributed to it.
Maybe. Ziegler's defense went on to have Colby's mother talk about Kristen and how she was and acted. She was standoffish and never revealed her real feelings. But then, of course, her family describes her the exact opposite. One last piece of evidence is brought up by the prosecution: the gun and a mark on Kristen's face. It was explained how heavy the gun was and was about 11 to 12 inches long. Then they showed autopsy pictures of Kristen's chin with a divot in it at about a 3 o'clock position. The divot was made by the gun's sight marks, but she was right-handed and it was unnatural to have the divot at the 3 o'clock position. For her to naturally fire the gun to her head, the divot would have had to been in the 6 or 9 o'clock position. The mark on her chin was consistent with Colby grabbing the gun from his bedside drawer, rolling over, placing it under Kristen's chin, and firing.
Wow, that sounds so cold.
That's what he's on trial for. So the prosecution is painting this picture right before the jury deliberates.
Crazy.
Now the case was in the jury's hands. Less than 2 hours later, the jury came back with a verdict. They found Colby Trickle guilty of first-degree murder of his wife, Kristen Trickle. They also found him guilty of first-degree premeditated murder, interference with law enforcement, and falsely reporting information. The sentencing was on November 20th, 2023. The judge sentenced Colby to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 50 years. Kristen Trickle's death certificate was amended to read homicide. I know this wasn't a suicide, but I wanted to look into some basic statistics. Suicide methods for men. Now, this is the list, and my assumption is that it's in order: firearms, hanging, asphyxiation, jumping, moving objects, sharp objects, and carbon monoxide poisoning. For women, again, assuming this is in top order on the list, self-poisoning, exsanguination, like bleeding out, like cutting your wrists, drowning, hanging, and lastly, firearms. In 2022, men died by suicide 3.85 times more than women. In 2022, firearms accounted for 54.64% of all suicide deaths.
And the way you read that list, if it is in proper order, it's pretty close to what we're saying here as far as the women not doing the things that are going to make a hot mess. They're doing the self-poisoning, the bleeding out, the drowning.
Right. Things aren't going to be messy.
Right.
Wyoming, Montana, and Alaska, respectively, have the highest suicide rates in the U.S. so far in 2024.
I find that really interesting because I would assume it would be like in the faster pace I don't know, cities, big city type places where people could get lost and get depressed. And those are some of the most beautiful states in the country.
No, I fully agree. And ironically enough, California was way at the bottom of the list.
And now that is surprising. Yeah, we're all on top of each other over here. So you would think that people would just be more annoyed and, you know what I mean, not as happy.
Right. My hope is that if anyone is thinking about suicide, that they have a support system to talk to or seeks help. Quote, one of the things that Kristen would want us to tell people is that if you're in a situation that is unsafe, if you are being controlled or you are being hurt by the person that you live with, she'd want to give others some hope that there is an out and to take a very hard step because it may save your life. End quote, said Brant Rice, Kristen's uncle.
Wow, what a story.
Up and down, a lot of little side roads.
Yeah, a lot of definite little side roads and very interesting. And I'm glad that Colby got what I felt he deserved.
His comeuppance.
Yeah, I mean, what a jerk. He was an all-around jerk.
I wonder if he got his doll in jail.
It's his bunkmate. Wow, truly sad. And he didn't seem bothered by it at all. Like he just went on with his life, started buying stuff.
Did his self-help videos on Facebook going through trauma.
Yeah, what was that about? What were the self-help videos about?
I think it was just him talking about, his experiences and, trying to get through the loss of your loved one kind of thing.
Oh, geez, even worse. Oh, well, I'm glad justice was served. Thank you for your story.
You're welcome.
And as usual, thank you to our listeners. Remember to take care, have fun, and let your grimaginations run wild. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
We just want to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send in your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at grimwitwithdimwits, Twitter at grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook, Grimwit with Dimwits. Join us every Monday for new episodes and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
We would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.